Okay, we're ready, good people? Jim and Daniel, you ready? Yeah, Daniel? Yeah? Yo, yeah? Mahmoud? Ben? Okay, let's do this. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Monday. I hope you had a good weekend, even though it was kind of cloudy and rainy and
I still went out.
not that enjoyable. What's that?
I still went out.
You still went out? Yeah. Well, there was some, there was some breaks in the rain, so, or did you just go out in the rain and
Yeah, I just kind of embraced it.
just embraced it? Yeah. It's true. Here in Vancouver, if you if you don't go out in the rain, you're not going to go out very much because it does rain a lot. What's that?
The rain's quite good.
Yeah. When did you arrive here?
Towards the end of the year.
Yeah. The last few summers here have been actually quite dry. I guess we'll see how the next few months are, but yeah, it's January, February are pretty wet. December, January, February are pretty wet, but it's better than snow.
Yeah, true.
Way better than snow. Okay, so let's see who's here. Miles is here. Good morning, Miles. Michelle's here. Good morning, Michelle. And Tufshin Sana's here. Good morning to you as well. So, right. Hitler. How could we forget Hitler? On Friday, we were talking about his new order, right? And I think what I might ask is, so people with laptops, can you maybe close them for a few minutes just so I know that you're with me? Like Daniel and Jim and Yo-Yo, can you just close your laptops for a little while? Thank you very much. That'll make me feel better. So, we said that Hitler had grand plans for Europe, right? He was going to create a new order in which Germany was self-sufficient and was kind of the economic center of Europe, right? It would harvest materials from all around Europe and other places in the world, and it would do all the manufacturing and most importantly, the profit making, right? Germany would also be sort of the political and power center of Europe, and so Germany would have sort of control over all of the other nations of Europe, right? He was going to rationalize agriculture, right? Do you know what that means, rationalize agriculture?
We don't know if it's and everyone gets a product, right?
That would be the
Ration it.
well, no, but that would be the goal, right? Is to organize it so that it's as efficient as possible, right? And usually, what you find is that as things become bigger, usually they become more efficient, right? So again, if I have a little grocery store downtown, I've got to hire someone to work in the store and order the products, and then I've got to hire someone to do the books, right? To do the taxes and keep the ledgers and all that stuff. That's all expensive. But if I open another store so that I have two, well, now I can use that person who's keeping the books to keep the books for two, right? So I save money. And the more stores I have, the more I can kind of, more efficiently use my staff. And the bigger a store I am, the better deals I get from my suppliers, right? That's part of the reason why Walmart has such low prices, right? Because they buy massive quantities of stuff, right? So they get a really low price on it. So again, the bigger things get and the more kind of centrally organized they can actually be really efficient in some ways if they're run correctly. And so that's what Hitler plans to do, right? He's going to organize industry and agriculture on a large scale. That way it will be more efficient, or so he hopes anyway. That's what the Soviet Union planned to do as well, but that didn't really work out for them. But we know that he also had a social order to his plan. Pure-blooded German citizens or pure-blooded Germans would get citizenship. Everyone else would have fewer to no rights within Germany, right? And again, people at the bottom of his pyramid, Slavic people, Roma people, Jewish people, homosexuals, people with disabilities, they would all be removed, right? We talked a little bit about Nuremberg, those two laws that were decreed that kind of further isolated Jewish people from Germany itself and removed additional rights from them. And then this Kristallnacht thing we talked about as well, right? This night, the glass night, right, where the Nazis kind of run wild and kill and arrest and vandalize, the Jewish population in Germany, right? But we said all this time, Britain and France are appeasing Hitler, right? What does appeasing mean? Keeping him happy? Or more or less, right? When you appease someone, you're just kind of giving them what they want, hoping they will, hoping they'll calm down, hoping it will satisfy them, right? Again, think of a child having a meltdown in a mall, and the parents are just like, here, just give him what he wants so he'll calm down, right?
My parents would never.
Mine neither, but
They live in a different time now.
but some parents do. Some parents do. So again, they appease Hitler, right? They just give him what he wants, right? Britain really isn't in a position to want to interfere with Europe. They're in a depression, as are most places in the world. But also the citizens are not really eager to get involved in another conflict in mainland Europe, right? World War I is fresh in everyone's memory still. They're not ready to arm themselves and go marching back into Europe. Like that's it happens anyway, but nobody wants that, right? Again, France is dealing with the same thing, right? There's an economic depression that they're dealing with, and they're also kind of dependent on a few things, right? So they're dependent on Britain to step in if the Nazis get too rowdy, but also they're putting their faith in the Maginot Line. Do you know what the Maginot Line is? Maginot Line is a bunch of fortifications and cannons and things that France puts into place between them and Germany. And so the idea is if Germany tries to, invade France, there's going to be all these bunkers and fortifications and big guns to defend France, right? So France is kind of feeling like, well, whatever happens over there, we're safe, right? We've got our Maginot Line. Britain will save us. We don't need to be involved. We talked a little bit about propaganda on Friday as well, right? And propaganda, we said, was something that the government uses to tell people what the government wants them to know or to make them feel what the government wants them to feel, right? There can be positive propaganda, there can be negative propaganda. Some of it is based in truth, some of it is entirely fake news, but it depends, right? It depends who's using it. But all governments kind of use even a little bit of light propaganda, right, to make themselves, seem like they're doing a good job, right? But for Hitler, he's using it for a more sinister purpose, right? He knows that he can lead the people by emotionally manipulating them with propaganda, right? Whether it's films, whether it's posters, whether it's speeches, all of these things are used, radio broadcasts, all of these things are used to kind of turn the people in the direction that Hitler wants to turn them in, right? And actually, if this was a longer course, maybe we'd have time to watch it, but he actually commissioned movies by like big-time German directors. So he portrayed Germany and the Nazi Party like on the big screen. So he is a master of propaganda and media. Whether he's a genius or not, I don't know, it's up to you, but he does know how to use these tools, right? In a similar way that Trump knew how to use Twitter, right? He did know how to get his way using his two thumbs while on the toilet, right? He knew how to do that. We looked at a few of these and we talked about some of the messages that were being transmitted, right? And so what was this one? What was this one kind of meant to communicate to us?
To make the youngest people and students and the argument is people?
Yeah, the hostel and the
Yes,
yeah.
hostels.
Yeah, so they're building shelter for youths, right? And so here a member of the Hitler Youth, which is, kind of like the Girl Guides or the Boy Scouts or whatever, except with Hitler at the top. Yeah, they're
And no
collecting.
cookies.
What's that?
And no cookies.
And no cookies, no, which is too bad. The cookies are almost the best part, but not the mint ones.
Mm.
Yeah, but so this is like, oh, look how nice the Nazis are, right? The Nazis and the Nazi youth or the Hitler youth, they're collecting money to do good, right? Charitable things. How sweet, right? And doesn't this girl look like a sweet, wholesome young woman? Yes, right? Same thing with this guy, right? I think we said he looked kind of like,
The ideal guy.
yeah, he's kind of the ideal German. He's strong and proud, Nazi flag, handsome as anything. Look at that chin, right? Um, and yeah, the students are fighting for the people, right? So yeah, if you wanna be like this guy, fight for the people, right? Fight for the Fuhrer. That's what they're trying to say, right? Saw this one, which I think we pretty quickly. This is a little less subtle than most, but yeah, you can see Hitler as like a messiah, right? As a leader of his people, maybe one that's even ordained by the heavens, right? Wow. We saw this one. Good morning. We saw this one too, right? And what did we say was going on here?
The Nazis are protecting like the family, something like that.
Yeah, the Nazis are protecting German families, and here we have a very wholesome looking,
Family.
blonde-haired, blue-eyed family, right? And who's protecting them, right? It's the Nazi party, right? And that's a pretty fierce-looking eagle, right? You don't mess around with an eagle like that, especially since it looks like it's 10 feet tall. But still, that the message is there, right? Here's some that I didn't show you on Friday. Mm.
That's a strong message.
Not so subtle, yes?
No?
Yeah, so what's Hitler trying to say? Or what's he telling the people?
Jewish people are fighting themselves behind America and Egypt.
Yeah. So we've got the UK flag, the British flag, the American flag, and what's the other one?
Soviet.
Yeah, that's Soviet Union, right? So behind all of those three are the Jews, right? And again, this speak.
Oh, he's fueling the German hate for the Jews.
Yeah.
That Jews are your enemies.
Yeah, so he's doing a couple things, right? He's identifying Jewish people as the enemy. He's speaking to that sort of Jewish conspiracy theory, the idea that Jews are kind of controlling the world from behind the scenes. And that conspiracy theory still kind of exists. There's nothing to it. It's ridiculous. But still people believe it or talk about it. And here Hitler's saying, it's true. Behind all of our enemies is this Jewish conspiracy. And how does this Jewish person look here? He does look fat, yeah. But what's his face look like?
Like just as the Jewish person,
It's just a gangster.
What's that?
Gangster.
Like a gangster? Yeah, so he has what some might call a Jewish nose, right? So
Like
he's
a really big nose.
he's got a really big nose. He looks kind of like a gangster, right? A little bit.
What's their dream name?
What's what?
Six Animal.
The star?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the Star of David, and so it's kind of a symbol for Jewish people and the Jewish nation. It's on the flag of Israel. If you look, it's in the middle of it. But it's a way that the Nazis were identifying Jewish people. So just in case there's any confusion, we see that he's definitely a Jewish person, right? And what do you get from his facial expression? What kind of look is that?
Like he's adopted, they are adopted people, so the Jewish people, he look like a gangster and he guy is not enough good thing.
Yeah,
So they're trying to do propaganda against the Jewish people.
yeah, he looks like he's up to no good, right? He's kind of peeking out from behind the thing, kind of looking around, squinty eyes, right? Right? He looks suspicious, right? He looks like he's about to do something bad, maybe, right? But this is not the least subtle of Hitler's propaganda, right? Have a look at this one. So this is actually a poster for a film. Okay, so this was a German film from the 1930s, and I know I don't have a translation here, but what's written there in German is "the eternal Jew." So, what do you notice about this one?
Looks like a devil.
He look why? How does he look like a devil?
Where's the D's in
Where's the what?
D's
This film, Riese, it's
Like-
in this.
Like at the bottom? Okay. Tuk umoya diese Film sehen. And a documentary film about the Jewish. Can you get any more from that?
It's a real German, actually, not the German that I know.
Uh-huh.
Hard to understand.
Okay. But yeah, so here we have a documentary film about the eternal Jew. And what makes you think he looks like a devil?
Pointy ears, the glare on the hair kind of looks like a fan.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah, I missed that actually.
the symbol,
The Jewish stuff.
Yeah.
Jewish star on the forehead, kind of just looks like.
It looks
Do you
like
call it the Star of David?
it looks-
like the devil star.
well, that's the Star of David, but there's a satanic symbol, a pentagram, which is also a star.
With a circle around it.
Yeah, but it's different.
What is that for?
Pentagram?
Is it?
Hang on.
But like usually Satanists put it on their forehead as well.
Yeah, pentagram. Give me 1 second here. Pentagram. What's going to come up here? Oh, okay, there we go. So, here, like this sort of thing. Yeah. So that's supposed to be a satanic symbol, right? And so here they've kind of cleverly
Replacement.
placed it in the place where you'd see the pentagram, but it's the Star of David.
There's different. This star on this picture
Yeah.
has 6 angle, and this picture just shows 75.
Oh, that's right. There's a different number of points as well, right? But similarly, yeah. So you can. There we go. Yeah. So you can still see this star. This is the Israeli flag, right? So you can still see the star used as a symbol of the Jewish people and of the state of Israel. But it is not, it's definitely not a pentagram, but it's used here,
To represent the pentagram in the
yeah, almost,
Kind of to reference it.
yeah, and maybe to point out to people, oh, look how,
Because at first glance I honestly thought that was a pentagram.
yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people, saw the similarity, even though the stars look different and there's different numbers of points, even so, there's a similarity, right? And here we have this character that almost doesn't even look human, right? It looks like some sort of devilish monster, right? And what do you think they mean like by the eternal Jew? What does that mean, like eternal?
Immortal.
Immortal? Yeah. It's almost like they're supernatural, right? They're
Not human.
they're not human, right? In some way. And they're in a way they're almost like frighteningly powerful, right? What other things are immortal in like popular culture?
Gods.
Gods are eternal. devils are eternal.
Angel.
Who?
Angel.
Angel.
Oh, angels are eternal.
What, demons?
Demons, vampires, right? They're immortal or eternal as well. So that's almost kind of scary, right? It's like, ooh, the eternal Jew, right? There's some sort of like spooky, you know,
Something from hell.
yeah, something supernatural from another world, right? Is that kind of scary?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Hitler's kind of using fear here, right? He's turning the Jewish people into these monsters for people to fear, right? So that's useful for him, right? But he's also going to do something else. Now, have a look at this one. Oh, no, sorry, the one after this. But sometimes I forget my slides. So what's going on here?
Yeah, the Jews not eating people.
Yeah, and again, look at this man.
It doesn't look like a man.
I won't be saying that he is a wall.
He's saying what?
Can you zoom a little bit on that drawing?
I don't know if I can.
I can't see it exactly. But I think they said ein wall, one wall
Is threatened by Jewish.
represents itself. They say that like the Jewish people like the wall and they will eat you now.
Oh,
It's a weird gene.
oh, they're.
I think it's the old one.
Oh, okay.
They're saying like they gonna eat the human.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So again, they're using fear against the Jewish people, right? So here we are looking at Jewish people as monsters, right? And he looks like Shrek almost, right? Except a more evil version of Shrek, right? Again, not really a human face, right? The face of a monster or an ogre or something like that, right? Okay, here's where he's doing something different. Now what's happening here? What are lice? Do you know what lice are? Yeah, they're pests, right? They're parasites. They're tiny little bugs, and they can kind of nest in your hair and lay eggs. It's kind of gross. Sometimes at schools they have outbreaks of lice, and everybody has to go home and, you know, pick them out of your hair and use a special shampoo and a comb, and it's kind of gross. And
Shave off all the hair.
or you can just shave off all your hair, right? If you want to do that. Most
Did that.
did you?
Yeah, there was an outbreak in my kindergarten or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just shaved it all off.
You didn't have them, but you wanted to.
Yeah, just to be safe.
Okay. Yeah. So elementary schools sometimes.
Yeah, I remember they always this shape.
Yeah. Yeah. But so what's Hitler saying then?
He said that the Jewish are
Yeah, they're pests, right? They're parasites, they're insects, right? So this is a different message, right? Because the other message was you should be afraid of the Jews, they're evil, powerful.
they are not clean.
Here they are not clean, right? They are, they're something to be exterminated, right? When you have pests, whether they're rats or ants or, lice or whatever it is, parasites get exterminated, right? Pests get exterminated. And that's exactly what Hitler is saying here, right? We'll come back to this a bit later, but this is something you always want to watch for, because this is an early stage of genocide, right? Where one group of people is identified as subhuman, less than human, and especially if they are identified as pests, right? Rats, bugs, locusts, lice, whatever, right? Any animal that is kind of gross and you want to kill if it gets into your house, when you see people compared to this, bad sign. Very bad sign. And so here we're seeing it in Nazi Germany. But we'll come back to that in a little bit. Right. So on Friday we talked about the Spanish Civil War, right? We said it was a complicated war that, for the most part, the Western world completely ignored, right? So Britain didn't take part in it, France didn't take part in it, the U.S. and Canada could not be bothered. Although some people from those countries actually did fight in the Spanish Civil War. They just came over kind of without their country. They came over on their own to fight. But we watched a little video on it last time. The video had so much information, it was ridiculous. And again, you know, what I want us to take from this is the idea that there were a lot of different sides kind of fighting to establish what kind of government that Spain would have. And everybody, you know, with an interest kind of jumped in, right? So Catholics, nationalists, the workers, fascists, the Catholics, I said that already, communists, everybody kind of jumped in and fought it out, right? And so for people like, good morning, for people like Mussolini in Italy and Hitler in Germany, this was a great opportunity for them to test out their military muscles, right? And so both Mussolini and Hitler support the fascists, Francisco Franco's fascists, and they get a little bit of practice in war, right, before the real thing is about to break out. And you can see here the Spanish Civil War ends in 1939, and that's basically,
3 months later, I think.
yeah, 3 months later we head into World War II, right? So this is kind of, you know, it's the opening act for World War II, if you want, but not everybody is really involved in it. And again, as you may know, Spain is going to stay out of World War II anyway. Because of this, yeah, they have their own stuff to deal with. So again, it's pretty complicated, but the nationalists, a fascist government, will succeed and will rule Spain until 1975, which isn't that long ago. He said to himself, thinking about when his birthday was. Okay, so this is kind of our timeline, and we've heard about a few of these things: the occupation of the Rhineland, the unification with Austria, the annexation of the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, and then the rest of Czechoslovakia, and then finally the invasion of Poland, right? And as many of us know, that is the straw that breaks the camel's back, and the Allies are like, okay, this guy's a problem. We've got to do something, right?
About time.
Exactly. This is a bit of trivia, but it may interest you to know that in World War I, Canada was kind of pulled into it because we were kind of more of a colony of Britain. So when Britain declared war, Canada was just in it. But this time, in the decades in between those two, Canada had become a more independent country. So in this case, Canada actually chooses to go to war. And so we actually waited a full week after Britain just to show that we were, not just blindly following them in. We were doing it on our own, sort of thing. So it was but anyway, just a little fact for you there. Right, so that brings us to the beginning of World War II. How many people have studied World War II before? Yeah. Would you say on a scale of 10, how well do you know it? 1 being I don't know it very well, and 10 being yes, I know everything.
7?
7?
It's been a few years.
Sure. 6? Yeah. Okay. Mm.
I don't know anything about the Canada side. I don't know anything about South Canada.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's true, right? Because this war is going to have a European aspect to it and a Pacific aspect to it, right? And some of us may have more exposure to the Pacific side of that conflict than the European one, or vice versa.
Like everything that Japan did, that I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll try and navigate through this. I don't like to spend too much time on battles and things like that. I'm kind of more interested in more broad things going on, but there's courses you can take in university if you really want to get into all the maneuvers and companies and stuff like that. Okay, but let's start with just a little bit of light reading, okay? Again, some of this will be review to you if you've done this before, but from this point I'll try to sort of add a few things in that may be more interesting, or that may be interesting to you. Maybe things that you haven't studied before, okay? But I'll give you some time to read so we can just talk about the early stages of World War II, and then we'll go from there, okay? But I think you'll need that in Microsoft Teams, and I will put it there right now. Let me see. Okay. If you need the pages in Microsoft Teams, they should be there. Should be there now. 2 first pages? No, I did. Okay, people, you want to take a little break?
What?
Yeah, we're going to take a little break because we've been reading and we need to rest our eyes. Okay, take a quick 10 minutes and then we'll come back and finish this piece, okay? Okay, good. Okay, good people. Let's get back to reading. Let me see. Maybe another 6 minutes. Think that's gonna be enough? Yes? Okay. Let me just put that on the clock so we can keep track. Oops. Okay, good people. I know this is a lot to read. This is like the whole war in one shot. But let's talk about a few of these and see what we've come up with. Okay. So, we said that the Nazis invade Poland in 1939. That kind of convinces Britain and France that they need to get into the war and stop this guy before he goes any further, and so they jump in, as does Canada. Not that anyone's that interested, but we're there nonetheless. Actually, we're very important in the war, but anyway. So question one here is, what Soviet action caused concern among the Western nations in the period of 1939 to 1940? Jim, maybe I'll start with you. What Soviet action was concerning for Western nations? Don't know? Crazy O, what do you think? You want to help him out? Not sure? No? Daniel, I'm going to go to you. What were the Western Allies concerned about with the Soviet Union? Okay, moving on to Yo-Ya. First question.
Soviet Union, what expression caused considerable debate as to which of the adversaries was the greatest threat to international security?
Yeah. So they're, think about the Allies, right? They don't want to get involved in Europe, right? And they're kind of watching Hitler as he takes over Austria and then Czechoslovakia, and then he finally invades Poland. And then out of nowhere comes the Soviet Union, and they take half of Poland. And so now the Allies are like, okay, well, we thought we had one problem. Now we have two problems. And so there's a little bit of panic, right? Because you know Hitler is growing, he's becoming a bigger problem, and then all of a sudden here comes the Soviets out of nowhere invading part of Eastern Europe, right? And it's like, oh God, now do we have two? Do we have two people to fight now, not just one? Right? Scary. Number two is the initial phase of the war is called the phony war. Does anyone know what phony means? What's it mean? Fake? Yeah. It's a slang word, but it's kind of an older slang. People. What's that?
It's rarely used.
It is rarely used. It's kind of we don't use that. If we had to call this, if we wanted to rename it, would we just call it the fake war? Or can we think of something more creative? Is there another word there's another slang term for something that's not real, not genuine?
Trial.
Like what?
Trial.
Trial?
Yeah. Like a trial.
Oh, well, no, because that's not really what it was either, right? It wasn't like it wasn't a trial run. It was just that nothing was really happening, right? Nobody, they declared war, but there wasn't really much fighting going on. Both sides were, shaking their fist at each other and threatening each other, but not really much shooting was going on, right? So they're saying it's a phony war because, well, it's a war in which nobody's warring, right? Nobody's fighting quite yet, right? So yeah, it's a fake war, it's a phony war, it's a war in which nobody is currently fighting, but of course they will soon enough. What happens to poor France in 1940? What? Pretty embarrassingly quickly, I would say, right? So apologies to France if you're watching, but
And then Britain in like 3 months, right?
what's that?
Britain in 3 months, something like that.
Britain in 3 months?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Like they fell after 3 months.
France did.
No, sorry, I'm just like. No, in Chinese discussion group on the internet,
Uh-huh.
when we talk about the word, when we talk about French, we don't like how to say.
Yeah, in China, I think France actually denouncing
France is what?
France actually denouncing
It's kind of like fucking.
Yeah.
in several days.
Yeah, like they're out really quick, right? Like the Germans roll in, it's like, okay, we give up. You got us. Right? Yeah, so and it's true, right? France takes a little bit of like ridiculing and they poke fun at them because they are out really fast. Right? So how does that happen? The Germans kind of roll in, right? How do they get into France?
Pure force.
Pure force, and what route do they take? They're going to go through, I think, Holland, and then Belgium. Poor Belgium, right? Both world wars, Belgium is like, guys, fight it out if you want. Just leave us out of it. We're neutral. Every war. Poor Belgium. So they come through Belgium. They drive right into Paris, right? What about that Maginot Line? I thought they had a bunch of bunkers and cannons and things like that.
Yeah, they work too long.
No, it didn't. Why not? Yeah, there's this part of it. So you've got basically a wall of fortifications, right? So you've got bunkers and guns and all kinds of things. And then there's this gap that's kind of a forest. And the French thought, well, it's too rough for tanks, so nobody will ever come through there. So we just won't fortify it. But of course, that's exactly what the Germans do. They just drive through it. And so the Maginot Line is sitting there waiting to repel Germany, and the Germans just go around, which is also embarrassing. So they roll into Paris. They demand its surrender. France does surrender, and then they kind of partition it, right? What does partition mean? Yeah, you kind of separate it, right? So what are the pieces and who's in charge of what? Hello. Who's? There's basically two pieces of France, and who's in charge of it? I think there's kind of a northern part, right? The northern part and the part next to the Atlantic Ocean.
North Africa?
Nope. Not in front. Before that, I think. Before that. Andre, can you help me out? Yeah. Say that again? The no, hang on. Hang on a sec here. I wonder if I have a good map. Here we go. Here we go. Yeah, let's have a look at this. There we go. There's the German occupation zone right there. So you can see where the Germans came from, right? They came from that mustardy colored or brown colored Germany there. They roll through Belgium and they're right into Paris, and they kind of take control of that western portion, right? Because who are they still fighting with, Germany? Who's Germany still fighting with? No, France has given up. They're out of it. America? No, not yet. Not yet. Yeah. Well, it's just Britain now, right? So you can see that Britain is up there in the pink, and so the Nazis are going to occupy this part of France in order to keep the British out, right? So they're going to try and keep them out of Europe. This area to the south here, the blue, that's the French government is going to control that still. But who's controlling the French government? Huh? No. Yeah. The Germans are controlling the French government, right? So the French government is in power, but they're just doing what the Nazis tell them, right? And so what are some of the things that the government does that the Nazis tell them to do? Has to do with people, two things, people and money has to do with. Let's see, where is that section? There's France. Here we go. Look on page, it's on page 118. That's page 5 of the PDF. Yeah, so the Vichy government, that's the French government in the blue part there, complied with German orders to take French hostages, of whom 30,000 were eventually shot, to confine a further 80,000 anti-fascists and most of the French Jews to concentration camps, to transport French Jews and 640,000 skilled laborers to Germany. Plus, where is it now? Plus, France has to pay 300 million francs a day to the Germans for occupying them. I don't know how much a French mark is worth in this period, but man, that sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? Yeah. So basically, the Nazis roll in, they take control of the top half of France. They leave the bottom half of France to be run by the French government, but the French government is taking their orders from the Nazis. And the Nazis tell them to round up all your Jewish people and send them to our camps, right? And if you have any skilled laborers, we'll take those as well, right? So they kind of strip France of their defenses, their skilled laborers, take all of their Jewish people to camps, and then fine them 300 million francs a day. Nice, right? What's that? So nice. That's so like Germany, right? That's so Germany. Yeah. So yeah, France is out of it super quick, right? Which is scary because the only person fighting, or the only country fighting Germany now is Britain, right? The US is not in the war at this moment. It was just Britain and France and Canada versus versus Germany, and now France is out of it. The only thing that stands in Hitler's way is Britain, right? Which is, again, for me looking back at it, that's a scary idea, right? What's the battle? What's the Battle of Britain? What's that? It's against Germany, yeah, but what happens in it? Describe to me what this Battle of Britain thing is all about. Let's see. Maybe on page 119.
The earlier conflict is said to be among of the Battle of Britain, the that is demanded civilians were killed, but people not management.
Okay. So tell me that in your own words, what's happening?
Too much people were killed.
Yes.
Another founded
Yeah. How?
because of the conflict.
Yeah, I know. Okay. So here we go. Let me help you out here. So again, the Soviets invade, or the Germans invade Poland, and so do the Soviets. That freaks out the Allies because, again, who's the bigger threat now, right? They thought they were dealing with one bad guy. Now maybe they've got two bad guys. The phony war, we said, was because nothing was really happening. No fighting was going on. That's not true for Poland, of course, because Poland was getting invaded at the time, but still. France fell really quickly. Hey, while we're on this subject of France falling, did anyone see that movie Dunkirk? Yeah? How is it? Yeah? Because, yeah, that's mentioned in the text, right? These British and French soldiers who are kind of cut off in Germany's advance into France, and they're evacuated from basically every ship available, right? Yeah, I've been meaning to see it. I heard it's just like, yeah, and it's. I think they talked to people who had actually been at Dunkirk, and they said, yeah, that's kind of how it looked. That's kind of how it felt. But yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I want to. Okay, here we go. So the Battle of Britain is this, right? It was the kind of the early stages of an attempt to invade Britain. So the Nazis had this Operation Sea Lion thing, where the plan was to invade the island of Britain and maybe take over London. And if the Nazis figured if they could do that, Britain would be out of the war and they'd have won, right? But there was a little problem with this Operation Sea Lion thing. Do you know what it was? No? Okay. Why not? Didn't we just read it? Didn't we just read it, or is there just too much to keep in our heads? Because there was a lot. I mean, it was a lot of reading.
Plan to invade the UK.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. But there's a couple things that Hitler needs that he doesn't have.
Sea and sky control.
Yeah, he doesn't control the skies over Britain. He definitely doesn't control the sea. I'm going to go back to this. So there's the English Channel, right? So now that the Nazis control Germany and Belgium and France, they can just go across to the United Kingdom, to Britain, right? Except the British are in control of that channel, right? They have submarines and warships all the way through there, right? The Germans aren't going to be able to just sail across. They're going to get murdered, right? So they've got to control the air and they've got to control the water. They've got to control the channel. But they don't have control, nor do they have the ships to get those soldiers into Britain. They don't have the transport ships. So Hitler starts off trying to gain control of the air, right? And eventually what it turns into is basically a bombing of the city of London. So you've got bombers flying across from Germany and trying to sort of bomb the British into giving up, right? Ever seen this before?
Yeah.
Yeah? And so you've probably seen this. It's kind of almost a meme type thing, except the last part always changes, right? It's always keep calm and yeah, or something, right? There's always something different at the end. But initially, this comes from the Battle of Britain. And because this was the government telling people to keep calm and to sort of try to continue to do your normal life, right? Even though the Nazis are bombing us every night, right? And even though it's scary because, you at any time of day you could hear these sirens go off and everyone would have to run into the bomb shelter. Even though this is happening, just keep calm and, try to continue to live your life normally, right? Which actually is kind of I think that's the motto for the British culture is keep calm and carry on. But anyway, but that's where this comes from, right? So the Nazis are, trying to bomb the city of London into giving up, right? Does it work? It does not. Yeah, he can't control the sea. He can't get his troops into Britain, and the British will not surrender, right? Like he's hammering them nightly with bombs, and they will not give up, right? So he's kind of forced to to try a different plan later on. Of course, he'll never get a chance to, but it was kind of a failed attempt, right? Even though Operation Sea Lion sounds pretty cool, I think. It sounds like something badass, but
he still can live because they can bomb him and try to cross
yeah, and those bombing raids are happening both ways, right? So the Allies are flying into Germany, bombing them, while the Germans are flying into, London and bombing there. So it's a lot of destruction, is it not? Yeah. Okie dokie, people. I think we've only got a few minutes left, but I think we've worked hard enough for today. Come back tomorrow. I have a primary source from the time for you to look at and think about, connected to the Battle of Britain. But until then, yeah, pack it up, and I'll see you tomorrow, okay?